Hello and welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews.
I could eat a whole sub.
And I'm Gary, and today we're going to review and discuss Below, which released in 2002 from writers Lucas Sussman, Darren Aronofsky, and David Twohy, and directed by David Twohy. Ian, why don't you give us the synopsis?
Well, the story follows the crew of the USS Tiger Shark, a submarine out in the Atlantic Ocean in 1943. They've just picked up 3 survivors from a ship that has been sunk and brought them on board. The Tiger Shark is continuing its mission, but supernatural things start to fall onto the crew. Is there a deeper connection between the Tiger Shark and the survivors?
What the hell? Might get a silver star out of this patrol yet.
So back in 1999, Darren Aronofsky, who got co-writer credit on this, was actually going to direct this film.
Wow.
However, he changed gears and went and made Requiem for a Dream instead.
Wow.
And so David Twohy stepped up and then got co-writer credit on the film and made the film. And Miramax, once it was finished, looked at it and went, yeah, we're not quite happy. We want you to shave out all of the horror stuff and make this a PG movie. And David Twohy went, no. So Miramax went, you know what, fine. Your marketing budget, gone. And we'll just release it to these 2 cinemas over here where no one will ever see this film.
Yeah.
And yeah, this film didn't even make $1 million in the cinemas.
Wow.
It bombed spectacularly. I mean, it went so far below.
I was going to say, how can you bomb something that you don't even fucking release?
Right. Well, I mean, they barely released.
Yeah, you know?
And so, yeah, this film, if you were lucky enough to see it, like I like early internet at that point was always on the scout for new upcoming underground below horror movies. And this one popped up. So I was one of the ones that got to see it. And yeah, no one really had seen this film.
No, this was a new one for me. Gary said, hey, do you want to do the movie Below? And I'm like,
excuse me?
Below what? below what lies beneath? Like below, what are we talking about? And he's like, look, 2002. And I was just like, I've never heard of this movie. I've never seen it. But, you know, the cast that you've got lined up in this movie are some names that you would have seen numerous times after. Bruce Greenwood. You've got Hulk McNally. He's in it. Zach Galifianakis.
One of his earliest film roles.
Yeah. You've got Jason Fleming from Snatch. Dexter Fletcher from Lock, Stock. You've got Christopher Fairbank from Alien 3. Like, a lot of these names, I'm like, whoa, I know these guys. Why have none of these guys ever talked about this film?
Right.
But, like you said, I mean, if somebody, you know, higher up in an office somewhere goes, we don't like you, we're only going to release it to 2 cinemas. That's a marketing ploy, I suppose, to ruin yourself.
Pretty much.
But I mean, quite a cool little opening. Like the movie starts with that airplane flying over. I mean, I know it's got a specific army name, but I'm not.
Don't know the specifics.
Yeah, I think it's a water landing kind of plane, possibly. You know.
Well, it doesn't make an emergency landing in the ocean.
No, it doesn't.
It does throw what I can only assume is a CGI flask with a message in it that we found you survivors down there and we'll send help.
Yeah.
And that's when we cut to the USS Tiger Shark, who gets the distress call, gets the message sent that, hey, we need to go and find these survivors.
Yeah.
And you've got Holt McCallany there playing Loomis, who's just like, hey, we don't even know if they're German, English, Italian, French, friendly, hostile.
Yeah.
Do we have to go? And Bruce Greenwood's Captain Bryce is there like, well, it doesn't sound like a request, does it?
No.
So off they go.
Yeah. And the first thing that caught me with this movie was that they actually used, you know, a real life American submarine for some of the actual shots like
it's
we
the
see.
USS Silversides. So it's a real ship which obviously has been decommissioned and turned into like a museum.
Yeah.
It has tours through it.
Yeah.
But getting an authentic real World War II submarine for this, it definitely elevates the production design.
Totally. You know, because from that point you're just like, right, this is our set. You know, we are set in the submarine for the majority of this movie. And, you know, Lieutenant Bryce comes along, finds the 3 survivors, brings them on board, and we've got 2 men and a woman. And,
which causes quite a bit of commotion on the submarine.
Well, yeah, I mean, these men have been at sea for a little while. They probably haven't seen a woman since they left the dock somewhere. But I love the way that you follow like the message
all the way through the sub.
ship,
Yeah.
you know, or through the sub. Sorry, my bad. I know it's a sub.
It's
not
a
ship.
boat, not a ship.
It's a what? It's a boat,
It's a boat.
but a boat's a ship to me. All right, confused. It floats and sinks and goes below. Well, all right.
From everybody on board this ship.
This is a boat you're a guest on, not a ship.
But going back with this message, you're watching these guys going through and they're just delivering the little bits of information that's being changed every now and again. Oh, it's a skirt, it's a woman, it could be English, it could be this, and all of a sudden you're all the way. I love the fact that obviously you got the crew compartment where they're all sleeping, but then as you get into the engine room, you've got the engineers who just sleep in there.
Yeah, they're like, there's a woman on board, I don't care, I got work to do.
But it starts off, like I said, with this kind of mystery coming on because the nurse, Claire Page, played by Olivia Williams, she is questioning what happened to her ship. An actual ship, not the boat that we're talking about with the tiger shark, but an actual medical ship that had sunk in the middle of the night. You know, they've been hit by a torpedo and the boat's gone down. Everybody's been in the water and they're the only survivors. And so she's questioning, you know, where the tiger shark has been. Have they seen anybody? But they're already being kind of not hunted, but there's a destroyer flowing around above them. So we get a kind of, it doesn't look great, but at the same time, I give it a bit of, you know, a bit of leeway because we are talking 2002. You know, the way that they go underneath the ocean and they're going deep to avoid obviously bringing any attention from the destroyer and its depth charges.
Yeah, exactly. The film kind of follows and apes a World War II movie of sorts, a submarine World War II movie. And so we have the moment where it's silence, radios off, fans off, silence as the destroyer goes over.
Yeah.
And it's like, don't make a sound. And then it's the sonar pinging, it's the panic, the action stations, the depth charges are dropping. Then they start exploding beside them.
Yes.
And it's just, it's all of that tension and it's all done fairly well.
Yeah.
Of course, the wide shots, you know, the eye candy is looking a little bit dated. The CGI is a little bit rough around the edges, but it's serviceable.
Yeah.
And so it's not too distracting. There are some CGI moments later that are a little bit like dated now, but it actually was fine, especially when you consider the budget. The film was pretty low as well.
Yes, yeah.
And so, but it was the thing that's alerted the destroyer was the fact that all of a sudden some music started playing somewhere in the submarine.
Yeah, that was freaky.
And so that was what caused them to get depth charge. But they survived that. And then they start to investigate who would have sabotaged them.
Yeah.
And they find out that one of the survivors they pulled aboard is a German.
Yeah.
And so what Lieutenant or Captain Bryce, he is now acting captain of the ship, goes in there and wants to question him. He's in there, he's armed, but this German officer or civilian, we don't really know, goes to grab this scalpel and is shot off screen.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very tense situation, this little moment, because, you know, Nurse Page, she's trying to argue that, you know, they have to give him his rights. He's a prisoner. He's under her medical care. She's trying to take care of him. And even the German soldier, he's being polite, but you can tell he's nervous because he's got all these Americans stood there looking at him like he's an absolute criminal. You know, they're in a wartime situation. And so him reaching for the scalpel isn't something like, to me, it wasn't like an aggressive stance. It was more of a defensive. But Bryce just didn't see it like that, saw the weapon, pulled the gun, bang. And he's just like, yep, we've dealt with the sabotager. I have to admit, one of the best moments I thought were in this movie. And it goes hand in hand with, like we said, this computer-generated imagery, the CGI looking a bit dated. But I thought it was just so good first time. Was where that depth charge is bouncing along the side of the boat.
Yes, it's literally one of my favorite and most memorable scenes because, like, we've all seen depth charge scenes in movies, in war movies, but watching that one bounce, and it was the fact that you cut inside as well, and they're like following the sound across the hull, just like at any moment, it's all over. And then it kind of gets stuck and then falls off the side. You're just like, whew.
I mean, I've got to give the guy who, you know, created that, the person, I don't know if it's a guy, you created that. They spent some real time, because even though my brain's like, it's CGI, part of me was like, man, that's a real goddamn barrel.
Yeah.
I like the way it sounds, the way it bounces. And like
the sound design in this film is actually fantastic.
Yeah.
Like, just, especially as things get weirder later on, where it's like, I mean, even the crew, they're looking around, they're like, I've been a Submariner for years and I don't know what the hell that sound is.
Yeah.
It's like, it starts to get a little bit creepy.
You hear a lot of strange things at depth. I mean, I can't even identify them all.
Fuck if I know.
They just start to pick up on all these little supernatural things that are happening. They start to see things that they may or may not be there. There's a
Like
point...
the record coming back on out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And so Bryce runs down in there and he's just like, nah, no, never again. He just smashes it up.
I like the bit where the power went and he looked down the corridor and you saw like a crew member there and he was just in shadow, and I was like, is that a ghost? And it's like just a real crew member. He's just like, Captain, is everything all right? And the captain's like, yeah, it's all fine. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, for me, it's like almost like Dead Space kind of vibes, where it's almost like, is everyone on the ship slowly succumbing psychologically to something?
Yeah.
And that's why everyone just feels a little bit odd.
Sorry, sir. Humidity builds up, trips out the power bus. I'll get right on it.
I'm sorry.
Sorry for what?
But at the same time, the lights are still on. Everything's still powered and everything still looks relatively clean and serviceable.
Yeah.
And it's, of course, as the film goes on, things deteriorate more and more.
Well, it's like that part where, I mean, the boat takes a bit of damage and they've got to swim outside to swim back in and try to repair some of the damage.
They've got a bit of an oil leak, essentially.
Yeah, got a bit of an oil leak. And like I said, this is where I came across Zach Galifianakis, and I was just like, I was well shocked. Because like the first time I ever saw Zach Galifianakis was in the Hangover movie.
Yes, yeah.
And I absolutely love him in Between Two Ferns.
Right.
So when I saw him in this, I'm like, oh, brilliant. He's going to bring some comedy, I suppose.
It was before he was known as a comedy actor.
Yeah.
Even though he does have probably the funniest moments in the film, they're not belly laughs or anything. It's just more little nuanced character moments.
Well, he's known as Weird Wally.
That's right, yeah.
So, like, you just know that he's just into kind of weird stuff. But he fits in with all the kind of mismatched crew.
All of these, like Cracker Jack toy things out of the packages, and he ends up like making a necklace out of them. It's like a shrine, like to ward off evil spirits.
Yeah. And like I said, we've got Jason Fleming from Snatch as well. He's trying to pull off a American accent, I suppose.
I don't know why they cast him as an American. Like, he could have just been another British serviceman.
Because we've already got Dexter Fletcher, who's a great British actor, as one of the servicemen they picked up. And so I thought it must have just been so weird for these two guys who've worked together in Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels with each other, with like Cockney, limey London accents like they normally have. Now one of them's trying to be an American.
Fuck the Brillo pad. This ain't about her. He talked to me.
Oh, wow. The dead guy.
The dead crowd talked to me.
Like I said, the captain and Loomis, they've come up with this idea of sending crew members outside the ship, back inside the ship so they can repair it. And they're planning on sending Lieutenant Steve Kors, played by Scott Foley, with them as well. And you could tell that there was something strange going on as the movie's going on with some of the crew. Because you've got Ensign Odell, played by Matthew Davis, who's questioning Bryce's, Loomis's, and a couple of the other characters' decisions of what they're doing with the crew, because there's four main guys who are just kind of deciding what happens to everybody else.
Well, the three senior officers now.
Yeah. But it's just like there's just a mystery that Odell is trying to question. And so it's when they go inside to look for this oil leak, Stumbo and Weird Wally go one way, and Odell and Kors go the other. And Kors has got this hammer, and he starts to talk about what Bryce and he may have seen the night before. Now, we'd already been told that the medical ship had been sunk, and Dexter Fletcher's character had seen a submarine, but he wasn't too sure because it was dark. They fired one torpedo. Odell has been told that something happened the night before, and everybody went. The four major senior officers went up to the comm tower when the boat had surfaced. To look out what was up there, and their actual captain, Captain Winters, just happened to fall over the side.
Well, the story was that he was fishing for trinkets to put on his mantelpiece, you know?
Yeah.
And then bumped his head. Oopsie.
Yeah. I'm like,
right.
What kind of captain does that? This guy's got years of sea experience. He's a captain of this ship. And he just happened to fall in the water?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that also leads into the fact that we also had Claire snooping around in Captain Winters' office, looking at his logbook and everything else. And that's when she realizes, hey, wait a minute, the handwriting's different. Your old captain's dead. Now it's Captain Bryce. So what happened there?
Yeah.
That's got her questioning. At the same time, the crew also pull a prank on her when she thinks she can hear voices.
Yes.
And then it turns out that it was Stumbo playing a prank on her.
That's right.
But then Stumbo also, when transporting the dead German, also hears the voices. And like I said, and so it's all of this building up and building up.
Yeah.
So we're seeing shadows, we're seeing shapes, and then we do see something in that like submerged compartment of the submarine that they're in there to fix.
Yeah.
And it's also there where he starts explaining to Odell that there is like maybe something that's been covered up.
Yeah. And just before Kors could, because it looked like Kors was attempting to maybe kill Odell,
especially with the shots of the hammer. Yeah.
So with the shots of the hammer, there was just this point where I was just like, is he going to hurt him? Is he going to kill him? And then Kors climbs up to try to repair the damage, and he sees a ghostly apparitional type face appear, and he falls.
Yeah.
Like I can't remember actually seeing him bang his head. But he screamed, and Zach Galifianakis and Stumbo, they come running down to look for the body, and when they pull the body over, his eyes are all bloodshot, and he's got a head wound, and that motherfucker dead.
Yeah. So yeah, the three of them do make their way back, and of course they're then interrogated by Bryce, like they've lost another crew member.
Yeah.
And they don't really want to explain how scared they kind of were, because no one really wants to admit that something otherworldly and supernatural is occurring.
Well, it's also the thing, because I always like it that in some Navy type productions, they say when you have a woman on board, it's bad luck.
It's a curse, bad luck, yeah.
So that starts to come out in the crew, and it really
they all start to like discuss amongst themselves what they think's happened.
Yeah.
And they theorize they're in purgatory.
Yeah.
Like maybe that destroyer, maybe that depth charge that bounced along the ship did blow them up. Maybe they are sunk at the bottom of the ocean right now, and they're just coming to the realization that they're all dead. So it's kind of neat. But then you also have Holt McCallany's Loomis character, who's just like bangs his hand on the thing. He's like, no, we're not going to be talking about this supernatural nonsense. Yeah. We've got another problem. We're losing oxygen. There's too much hydrogen in the ship. So that's the next emergency. You're all breathing in fumes.
Yeah.
You're all seeing shit that ain't there. So get your heads together and get this fixed.
Because they just couldn't surface either, could they?
Because they knew that the destroyer was circling them.
Yeah.
They were having obviously malfunctioning equipment.
Yeah, because the ship starts to do its own thing.
Yes. He's trying to turn the wheel, trying to navigate the ship, and the ship's like, nah. The whole bloody wheel breaks.
Yeah, it just snaps in front, but the ship is still on its own course. It's doing its own thing. It's going down.
It's Dexter Fletcher who then draws a map, and he's like, it's going right back to where we started.
Yeah.
Autopiloting for some reason.
And you're just like, what is going on? And like we said, we had Loomis, who's at one point, Loomis is just like, fuck this shit. I'm out. You know, and he goes to this escape hatch type of area. And then the next thing you see is Loomis
swimming, kind of?
Yeah, he's kind of swimming away from the tiger shark. But he gets impaled by the antenna of the comm tower as it's coming past. And like we said, I know the CGI is a little bit dated. We're talking 22 years. But that was shot, I thought, was really, really well done as well.
Yeah, I think it looked cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, like, because this is a haunted Submarine movie.
Yeah.
It is, like, the essentials is a haunted house. And usually in a haunted house, like, why don't they leave? And, and it's like in Alien, because this film reminded me of Alien 3, with them bringing the only woman on board. Having Alien 3 cast, and the fact that they brought a monster on board.
Yeah.
And it's the fact that, in a submarine, it's haunted. You cannot leave.
No.
And so we actually get to see what happens should you try to in a panic.
Yeah.
And so I was like, that just cemented that it's getting pretty bleak and hopeless now.
Yeah.
And especially as we now have this instance where 90% of the crew all die in an off-screen explosion, which I thought was done pretty well. Now, we've had this whole build-up of the hydrogen and needing to fix it. We've got the moment where they are trying to fix it and the guy comes in with a light and he's like, no!
Yeah.
And it cuts back to the bridge and the lights just flicker for a moment.
I thought
and I was
that
just
was
like, damn, like in that moment, like most of the crew have just died.
Yeah.
And it's only when they open up the doors and go in there and just see all these burnt remains everywhere.
Yeah.
They do find one alive and he's just like, we don't deserve to live. The chief,
yeah.
And he dies as well. And so I do love how contrasted now the set is compared to where it was at the start. The lights are all broken, there's dripping water.
Yes.
It feels like rust. It feels like it's become dilapidated.
Yeah.
It feels like another world has taken over it.
Yeah.
And it just feels so different.
Man, I was really shocked when I can't remember what they were trying to fix, but that piece of metal came flying off and smacked Dexter Fletcher in the head.
Yeah, Kingsley gets taken out. We didn't know he died because he makes a sound off screen.
Yeah.
And then we see Claire cradling Kingsley there and he's like, damn, he didn't make it.
That's it. And I thought it was just quite well done that, I'd already started to get my suspicions about what was going on and what could possibly be the reason of why these three people were in the ocean and everybody's acting so weird on the tiger shark. But I thought it was also well done that whatever supernatural thing was on the tiger shark, it was only focusing on the four main senior members of the crew at the moment. Yes, okay, the other engineers and all that, they were killed, but that was kind of an accident. The ghost was aiming for the chief. It just so happened he had all these other people around him at the same time. And the ghost was like, well, you're all done as well. But yeah, Claire has come across the evidence from the logbook to confirm that it was the tiger shark that shot the medical ship. Her medical ship.
Bryce misidentified it, thinking it was a German vessel.
Yeah.
And they sunk it. And so to cover it up, they killed their captain because the captain wanted to rescue survivors.
Yeah.
But Bryce knew that would be the end of his military career.
Yeah.
His naval career was over. So I don't know whether it was an accident, but they were arguing it was heated and the captain went in the water.
Yeah.
So they say that he banged his head, but it's more like he probably got smacked
in the head. And that's the thing. Like, throughout this movie, I didn't feel like, particularly Bruce Greenwood's character, Lieutenant Bryce, I didn't think like he was the evil enemy. He was the villain. He
made a mistake, but now I love his performance in this, and I love how sort of stoic and strong and captain-like. I'm like, he'd be great in Starfleet.
Yeah.
And then to watch him fall apart as the guilt starts to build up on him.
And it's the same, like you said, with like Loomis and the chief of the boat, and even Corsa's character. These three weren't bad people, and they weren't even trying to protect Bryce. They were more trying to kind of protect themselves, which meant they had to protect Bryce. But somehow this... I don't even want to even try to understand how this ghost has... like Captain Winters... It's Captain Winters' ghost, okay? And Captain Winters has had a head injury and thrown overboard, and the tiger shark has gone off. And so they must have come back, and the ghost is just sat there in the ocean going, I'm going to wait for them to come aboard. And then I'm going to sneak on board.
Right.
Or did it swim? Did the ghost swim? Did
Maybe
he
it could glide.
Did he glide? Yeah. So the tiger shark returns back to the area, back to the crime scene, I suppose, and it surfaces in the middle of a storm. And Lieutenant Bryce has just gone sea mad at this moment. His crew are all dead. Obviously, he's faced with these survivors. They know the truth, and he has a gun. And even though it kind of implies that he's planning on killing them, he also still can't bring himself to do it. Because, like I said, he's not a complete bad guy. But they're trying to signal a ship. And it won't stop. It won't stop in time to see him. And I love that bit where he kind of looks up and he sees Loomis's body still attached to the compound. So he just starts
shoots
shooting
it and starts blaming him as well.
Yeah. Then I thought it was a bit weird because did he shoot himself twice?
He did. Yeah. I was like, man, one wasn't enough.
Yeah.
I mean, that ghost just really wanted him dead.
He really did. Like
double tap. Yeah. Right.
Like the first shot, I was like, oh yeah, I kind of expected him to do that, the honourable discharge, I suppose.
Yeah.
And then the second shot came, I went,
right? Is it the ghost pull the trigger?
is that bad editing, or did he just go bang? No, I'm not dead yet. Bang again. And then Odell comes running out with a Tommy gun, and he just starts firing that thing up in the air to try and get the British ship to come back and rescue them.
Yeah. And we see the flare get shot off. I'm like, they're going to be saved.
That's it. And I like the fact that the movie didn't go, okay, we're only going to have the main girl and the main guy survive.
Yeah.
You know, Zach Galifianakis.
Yeah, Weird Wally survived.
Yeah, Weird Wally survived. You know, guy from Snatch, he survived as well.
Yeah, no one expected him to get out.
I thought he was going to die after when he was talking to the dead German. Right. But even he apologizes to Paige as well. And it was just nice that the film actually ended with a few more survivors than your standard, final girl, final guy. But the ship, Tiger Shark, the boat, it starts to sink. And I did, once again, really like the shot of just watching the Tiger Shark sink right past the medical transport that's kind of sat on a ledge. It felt justified, that Captain Winters has gone down with his ship.
He has now, yeah.
Instead of just being left murdered in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah, and I believe it's also David Twohy who plays the captain of the boat that's rescued them as well.
Oh, wow,
little
nice.
Cameo there.
Yeah.
And they kind of look out as the boat's gone down and, roll credits.
Yeah. Well, I've got to bring up the sleeping ghost. There's a part where Nurse Paige goes into the captain's quarters and she finds the logbook and she starts reading it and she's trying to figure out, like Gary said, there's two different handwritings there, and then she gets the boat pictures, and because it's all dark and kind of shadowy, you can kind of hear like a weird breathing, so you're like, oh, the ghost is nearby, and she happens to turn and shine the light on the bed that's kind of behind her, and the ghost is lying there. And
just chilling.
That's it. It's so brief. I couldn't tell if his eyes were open or not. And if his eyes weren't open, then he's lying there.
Yeah, he was on his side.
I like the fact that you had the ghost there, but was he sleeping, or did he have his eyes open like, hey, how you doing,
It's a novel scare, I suppose.
Yeah.
But what were your favourite or most memorable scenes from the film?
I had a couple. I mean, I really did like I said, I really liked the death charge bouncing along the side of the Tiger Shark. I don't think I've really ever seen that in a submarine war movie before.
No.
Watching, I've seen crew inside the boats, listening to the sonar and depth charges and stuff like that. But to actually watch one of these barrels bounce along the side and get caught, I mean, it just really raised the tension. Like, shit, are they going to take some damage now and things like that?
There's not many action scenes in the film, but the few that are there, they work them well.
Yeah. Like I said, I really liked Loomis when he died and he comes out of the Tiger Shark and he just gets impaled. Like it just worked as an effect and as a kill. Like he was aiming to get away. Did the boat intentionally kill him like that, or did it just happen that it coincided with it? I don't know, but the fact that he's still there at the end, I'm like, that's a cool callback maybe. That's cool, because it could have just snapped off. You know, they could have broken a bit off and the body's not there. Same with the Tiger Shark at the end, as it sinks past, the medical transport. It just kind of leaves this haunting feeling like they know what they did and they know it was wrong and they know they tried to hide it, but they couldn't hide it and it was going to come out and they were going to get caught. Some of the acting as well, I thought was just really well done. Like I said, Jason Fleming and Zach Galifianakis as these kind of lower level characters that you were just, you were expecting them to die, but they didn't. They were always there to kind of help out and keep it going. Kind of surrogates for the audience. Like, they had no idea what the fuck was going on.
Yeah.
They just wanted to get off the boat. Like I said, Bruce Greenwood, I thought he was cool, especially how he starts at the beginning in charge, even though he's got this dark secret. But then by the end, he's gone completely sea mad with a gun.
Yeah. I mean, just to follow you, the depth charge sequence was really good. Watching Loomis get impaled as he tried to escape the submarine, very, very memorable.
Yeah.
I also like the sequence before that. The sequence before he does that, where he looks in the mirror, and the mirror is like a second behind him all the time.
Yeah.
And then it catches up again. Then he's like, I'm seeing things, and he turns around, and then his reflection turns around again. He turns and faces it, and it turns into his ghost. Then Winter's ghost, and then he's like, I'm ejecting myself out.
I'm gone.
I'm gone. I really thought that was quite creepy.
Yeah, that was a cool effect.
Yeah. There is a really cool transition in the film that I quite liked, the wipe, and it's when Bryce has got the ink and it's sort of blotting on the page.
Yes.
And it transitions to the head of the captain with the blood coming out of it in the water.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that was a really nice transition. Yeah, that was really cool. Actually, there was also one other bit that I thought was quite fun.
Yeah.
And that is when the ghost throws a book on the floor. I mean, we don't see it. There's just a book on the floor. Claire picks it up and like straight to the screen, it just says Macbeth. And I was like, okay, so that's the film just going, if you don't get it yet, this is about a vengeful ghost that's haunting our protagonists.
Yes.
So, cool. Yeah, so that was fine. But Ian, do you recommend Below?
I do recommend Below. I mean, it's not one of the greatest movies ever made, but it certainly is not the worst. I mean, it's an easy hour and 45 mystery with some great acting and a great set piece. I mean, the USS Tiger Shark, or, Silver Sides, whatever it is, it looks brilliant when it's above the water. The CGI, I mean, I'm not going to argue with people about what they see, but to me, it looked great under the water. I really felt the claustrophobicness for the crew, and I even felt like, even though this was just a misfit, a bunch of actors all thrown together, it really felt like that they were trying their really best to work as a crew, so you got behind them. So as the mystery unfolded, you don't remember all of the characters, and some of them are just going to die in the background. But the few main ones, that are holding their roles, you go, oh yeah, I know him. They're doing well. Like I said, if you love submarine movies, it's up there.
Yeah, I'm also going to be recommending Below. This was an entertaining, well-made, supernatural horror thriller with great tension and action, and backed up with a solid ensemble cast. Bruce Greenwood delivers a good performance as the conflicted captain who slowly falls apart under the weight of leadership and guilt. Olivia Williams also shines amongst her male co-stars and provides an emotional anchor that counters the film's rising bleakness. It's a fairly well-made script. Each character felt flawed, interesting, and multifaceted. They felt real enough to be relatable, though at times felt like the attempt to create authentic dialogue from World War II fell slightly short. The direction was great, the pace could have been tightened somewhat, but the production design was excellent. The very real set location, the USS Silver Sides, certainly elevates that claustrophobic horror with some great cinematography by Ian Wilson. The score by Graham Revell perfectly complements the film, shifting tones, but it's nothing too memorable or standout. So yeah, I mean, I'd say this was worth a watch. It's a good mystery thriller with some action that holds up well. I think it's a film as well that also kind of deserves a cult following. If only more people knew this film existed. 600 feet beneath the surface, terror runs deep. Thanks for watching Off the Shelf Reviews.
I'm telling you, there's some bad hoodoo on this boat.